People get really surprised when difficult material starts surfacing. Emotions become more accessible, your protectors start to soften, defended or unconscious material becomes much harder to avoid, and the nervous system starts communicating more loudly. I think irritation is information. I think it's also one of the first honest signals that we can experience. Overwhelm and your nervous system capacity. I think it's important to notice when you're in overwhelm. And again, irritation and anxiety can also fall under the umbrella of overwhelm.
Content presented in Cheshire Corners is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a legal professional if you have any questions or concerns about the content of this disclaimer, this series, or the legal implications surrounding psychedelic substances in your jurisdiction.
The next thing that feels important to talk about is working with difficult experiences. When the medicine or mushrooms, and I say medicine because I really like all psychedelics for different healing purposes, but mushrooms, when mushrooms bring something up or difficult experiences come up, it's really quick to think that something's failing. And I don't think it automatically means it is. Again, I think a lot of people enter microdosing assuming that it should only feel better, like they should only feel better when they take it, or that it should feel subtle, or it shouldn't disrupt anything. And people get really surprised when difficult material starts surfacing. Emotions become more accessible, your protectors start to soften, defended or unconscious material becomes much harder to avoid, and the nervous system starts communicating more loudly. And like I said, for some people, this may include trauma-related material becoming more accessible. It might look like fear or grief, emotional flooding. They might shut down or feel like they're shutting down. There might be relational pain, like it's hard to tolerate the people around you. And also realizing how much has been carried underneath the surface for a long time. And I want to be careful because not every difficult experience is healing, and not everyone should push through overwhelm, and not all discomfort is meaningful or beneficial. But in most cases, I think when somebody's entering the work from a healing, wanting to heal or fix themselves, that's what's going to come up, is because that's what needs to be worked on and needs to be addressed and attended to. Yeah, and I think it's important to know healing isn't forcing ourselves to open faster than our nervous system can tolerate. This work can become another way to override ourselves, to override our capacity or push ourselves beyond what feels safe and supported. But there is a difference between something being harmful and something becoming conscious. And so if you can discern what's happening and start to listen from a place of curiosity, you'll know, is this harmful or just something coming up to be healed? So when difficult experiences arise, instead of jumping to something is wrong, or I need to shut this down, or change something in what I'm doing, I become curious. What's coming up? What's my system communicating? What am I overriding, or what has been overridden? And what happens if I listen instead of immediately try to eliminate the experience of discomfort? And so I'm going to go through each of these areas a little bit and how to work with them. The first one we're going to talk about is irritation, because that's the biggest one I hear that immediately comes up for people. I think irritation is information. I think it's also one of the first honest signals that we can experience. I'll often hear, I just actually heard this the other day from a client. People will say, I'm feeling really irritable, or I'm really reactive, or I feel emotionally sensitive. Everything is just getting on my nerves. And irritation often gets pathologized really quickly. And this is what happened with this client, is they're like, something's wrong. Have you experienced this before? Like, I need to not be irritable. Again, sometimes it's not a supportive practice and something needs to change. The dose might be too high. That's usually a common theme, is you took too much. But sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's your body saying, I'm exhausted. More often than not, and specifically the theme that I've seen recently, it's I need a boundary. There's resentment that's been suppressed. I've been overriding myself and my needs. I can suddenly feel what isn't aligned. And part of the work with microdosing is learning how to become curious about those signals before shutting them down. Maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had, or maybe you need to spend more time grounding. And I think it's important to say, don't act out the irritation with other people, which is, I think, the fear that comes up is like, I'm irritated and I'm lashing out at people. But I think if we can stop before pathologizing it immediately and listen, it will less likely take over. And that's a practice that doesn't happen overnight. It happens through experience of it. And then every time it happens, like, oh, this is what I need to do. This is what I need for myself. Yeah. And I think mushrooms often increase our honesty before it increases comfort. And that can be really confronting because we're all used to overriding discomfort very quickly. I know I am, or have been in the past. So when irritation arises, instead of how do I get rid of this, start asking questions. What is this irritation telling me? Ask your body what it needs. Ask your emotions what they need. Where have you been abandoning your own needs and wants and boundaries? Are you resourced enough? Have you done a mindfulness practice? Have you moved your body? Movement's a really great way to get, I think, irritation moving. Same with agitation. Maybe you need more rest. Maybe you need some support or somebody to talk to. Maybe you need space. When people are microdosing, I often recommend that they give themselves a lot of space, and especially on the day or the day after they've dosed, because that's when people usually feel it the most. Make sure you cut out time so you're not working or not having to engage with people that might irritate you, right? So that you can really be with the experience. And so practically working with irritation, that's some of that, but slowing down, spending more time grounding, getting off of screens, journaling. What's the irritation about? Why are you irritated? How is the irritation showing up? Like, what are the behaviors or the actions or the words? Getting out in nature, having honest conversations on the days you're not dosing. A common thing, my clients who have kids specifically or partners, I'm like, let your kids and partner know what you're doing and that your emotions might be a little different for a while. Yeah, and I think that irritation can just be the nervous system's way of saying something needs attention. So anxiety is another common experience, and I think it often happens when everything starts to loosen, like our brain pathways, our serotonin receptors start to shift, our brain goes into the entropy, familiar things are starting to loosen, and defenses are softening, and that can feel really unfamiliar and uncertain. Like when feelings are coming up, when material is coming up, when you're having a different sensory experience too, because sometimes people are really sensitive and they start having physical sensations in their body, and that can feel like what's happening, right? And like I've said, sensitivity increases, emotional awareness increases, and uncertainty increases because the familiar patterns that the brain usually works in is changing. It's less rigid, desynchronizing, and that can really feel destabilizing, especially for people who are used to being really highly controlled. Like they stay highly controlled. They feel disconnected from themselves or from other people because of how maybe rigid their life or the way they operate in their life is. They tend to be very productive because of that, or they keep themselves cognitively organized to feel safe. And again, like anxiety isn't something that's going wrong. It's your nervous system encountering unfamiliar openness and uncertainty and vulnerability or emotional contact. Sometimes it can also mean your pacing is too fast and you've, again, taken too much. But I think really the piece is how do you respond relationally instead of reactively to the anxiety? So that also they all look very similar. Slowing down, grounding practices. For anxiety specifically, I like breath work. There's something called a biological breath where you breathe in through the back of your throat, breathe out through the back of your throat like you're fogging up a mirror. and it resets your nervous system. But when you're feeling nervous and anxious, it can really bring more regulation into your system. I get really sleepy when I do that breath. Like, it's a good one to do before bed. Therapy, I think, is really good, because if you're so used to being in control, the therapist can help you find ways where can you let go of that control and actually find flexibility in your life so that things don't feel so intense or overwhelming because you can't control them. Supportive routines can be really helpful. So creating some routines and new sort of patterns of how am I going to spend each day when I'm dosing or not dosing can create that familiarity in your system, and your body gets used to it, and then you can come to a sense of like homeostasis. It is important to be in what I would call homeoresis, which is disruption and change, but that's because that creates more neural pathways and newer ways of living and being, but both are important. Yeah, and more rest, a co-regulation, so regulating with a partner, a pet, like petting your cat or your dog, laying on the ground and co-regulating with the earth so that it's just not your nervous system trying to orient to itself, but you're orienting to somebody else who might be in a calm state, can be really helpful. The next one is very similar to anxiety. I think they go hand in hand. Overwhelm and your nervous system capacity. I think it's important to notice when you're in overwhelm. And again, irritation and anxiety can also fall under the umbrella of overwhelm. And overwhelm is different than activation because like working with mushrooms, microdosing, not microdosing, working with people can activate you. You can feel activated. And that's okay. Like activation, our window of tolerance goes through this period of, we kind of go up and down. Overwhelm is when you get outside of that window of tolerance. And it really means like when your system no longer has the capacity to be with what's arising, to be with the anxiety, to be with the irritation, to be with conflict, right? And that can look like your whole system gets flooded. You can't talk, or maybe you're talking too fast. Your system shuts down. Some people get really exhausted really quickly. Sometimes you disassociate, start kind of losing your sense of reality, or you go blank, brain fog, collapsing, like you can't move, difficulty functioning, maybe it's hard to eat, and then feeling emotionally consumed, like you can't be with your emotions and they're sort of taking over rather than you being in relationship with them. They take over and you can't bring yourself back to a sense of, I'm okay, I'm safe, right? Yeah, and I think when we let our system become overwhelming and we stay in that, it's actually not healing. And so we need to learn to titrate out of it. And often the most supportive thing with medicine is when that overwhelm comes up is less medicine, taking more space between doses. If you notice a pattern where every time you dose, maybe you're going every couple days or every other day, if you're overwhelmed every time, you might need to either spread it out, do like one less a week, or cut the dose in half. Grounding and orienting practices. I like orienting for overwhelm. It's kind of like what we did in our practice, where you start like looking around the room and you find something that either feels familiar, that brings a sense of ease or pleasure even. So sometimes that's a stretch for people, so I'll go with neutral. Find something that looks neutral that you can kind of look at for a second. It could be bringing in all your senses. So what do you smell? What do you hear? And going slow, not moving fast through it, because some people will bounce around the room and it actually creates more overwhelm. But it's like, when deer feel safe, they eat. And while they're eating, they look up and they just sort of look around and they're able to digest. And they're looking around slowly. They're not over here and then over here and then up here. They're just like slowly scanning, and then they go back down to eat. And that's kind of the same thing that supports our rest and digest and bringing us down from overwhelm, is the slow sort of orienting and then letting ourselves come back into center. Sometimes I like using a candle for that. It pretends to be my food. Look at a candle and then slowly scan and then come back to the candle. And the nervous system just drops. It's really nice. More containment, more slowness, pausing your protocol altogether for a period of time. And I think it's really important to learn your nervous system's capacity. It will change, it will grow, but you can't expand it until you've learned it. You learned what your nervous system does, what it doesn't like, what it does like. You learned how to modulate your experiences, not from a controlled place, but from oh, this is too much for me right now. I'm going to move over here for a second, and then I'll try to come back. Instead of avoiding it altogether. That's part of the healing. All right, I think we got one more on difficult experiences. Okay, nausea is another big experience that people have, both from microdoses and big doses of mushrooms, but also fatigue, and our body communicates to us. We get a lot of physical sensations. And again, it's framed as there's a problem here. It's immediately pathologized. It's something to eliminate. And yeah, it really sucks to be tired and to want to throw up. We don't want to feel that. I get that. But it's often an experience that our body is telling us something's happening. Some people might also feel like heaviness, shakiness, tightness, and there's just an overall increased body awareness. And not every physical symptom is also something to look into. I don't want to over-spiritualize that. Sometimes it is just a physiological sensitivity from digesting mushrooms, which sometimes our stomach doesn't like to do that. Sometimes it is dose-related, you took too much, or you took too little even. Sometimes activation comes when you're right at that threshold of like, I kind of on that, teetering towards being with the medicine, and then, but I'm not. Can also be overwhelm. Could be your body saying this is too much right now. But again, part of the relational medicine work is learning how to respond with curiosity and discernment rather than jumping into needing to fix it or overwrite it. So practically, supporting something like nausea might look like eating it with food. It might make it a little slower to digest, but at least it's like when you take a prescription and they say take it with food, it's so that you don't get sick. Same thing. Lowering the dose or even increasing the dose, taking more space between doses, drinking lots of water or hydration, electrolytes, eating ginger. Again, grounding. Sometimes even breath work can help shift the nausea. Maybe you do need to purge something. Like maybe that's what needs to happen. And so letting yourself work with that nausea and see how it wants to move. Reducing your stimulation. So cutting out caffeine when you're microdosing or any sort of other stimulant. Co-regulation again, because if it's overwhelm, nausea is going to come up, and letting your system regulate with another resourced person or thing or being will help. Yeah, and part of it is like stretching our capacity, but then also knowing when you're overriding your system just to keep dosing, right? Yeah, and then I think fatigue is also important information. We do live in a society that pushes for productivity and optimization and constantly be busy and doing things. And so tendency would be like, I'm just going to do more healing, or I'm going to look for more breakthroughs or grow or have more output. And fatigue could be communicating like, I just need to slow down. I've been over functioning for a very long time. I need rest. I need to feel safe. I need less intensity. And I mean, mushrooms can sometimes make those truths harder to override. It's just really bringing up things that you've been denying. I know that's been my experience. It often brings up the things that I've been avoiding and not wanting to look at. And when I can go into it, that's when they stop being problems in my life.
Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to Cheshire Corners. Tell me what you think in the comments. And as always, don't get psyched out.